All right, so today we're gonna be taking the first step in making sourdough bread. Before you can make sourdough bread, you have to have a starter, and there's multiple ways that you can go about getting one. One, you can just order a dehydrated one off of, online, and then they will mail it to you, and then you can just do whatever the directions say. The easiest way is if you have anyone that already has a sourdough starter, just get some of their discard. I mean, really the easiest way possible to make a sourdough starter is just to take a scoop of someone's sourdough, throw some water and flour in it, mix it up, and then you have your own starter. Super easy. But today I'm gonna be showing you how to make a sourdough starter if you don't have those other options. And it is really easy to do, but it does take some time. You're looking at anywhere from 7 to 14 days to get a good sourdough starter before you can start baking bread. And so the only thing you need to make your own sourdough starter is a good quality flour and some water. And so we're gonna go ahead and get started with this today. This is gonna be, like I said, a multiple day process, so I'll just be coming on here every day as we get this going and show you what to do with it. My favorite flour to use is Bob's Red Mill Artesian bread flour. It's an unbleached flour. I have the best luck using this flour. I don't really like to use any other flour for my sourdough bread, and that's including my sourdough starter. I have a scale here because I like to use a scale when I make my bread, but I will also tell you how to do it with just measurements. So once you put your jar on here, you need to zero out your scale. All right, so I'm gonna be using 50 grams of flour, or a 1/4 cup of flour, and then you're gonna use the same amount of water. So I'm gonna clear this back out. Okay, and we're just gonna mix this up. You want your starter to be like a pancake batter consistency. And one thing about the water, I had this, this is just tap water. We are on well water here, but if you have chlorinated water, then you're not really gonna wanna use that because it could mess up your starter. Some people say it's fine, other people say that they have a lot of problems with it, and so your best bet is not to use chlorinated water. And then I had this just slightly warm. All right, so we have this mixed up here. You're just gonna cover this up with a lid, and then we're just gonna let this set here for 12 hours the first day, and then in 12 hours we'll come and add some more stuff to it. Right now it just looks like a flour and water paste, but what you're eventually wanting it to do is have all of these little bubbles in here, and once your starter gets going really well, those bubbles, you can see it active. You'll see those little bubbles popping and moving around in here. So for now, this is done. We're gonna go ahead and put the lid on it, and I will see you in 12 hours to do the next step. It's been about 12 hours. So we're gonna go ahead and do the same thing that we did this morning. We're gonna put 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water, and just mix it up. Or if you're using measurements, a 1/4 cup of water, a 1/4 cup of flour, and then we're just gonna set it in this like a warm draft free place until tomorrow, and then we'll start doing this just once a day tomorrow. It doesn't have any type of a smell or anything yet. I mean, it just smells like flour, but it is starting to get some type of like little bitty bubbles on it. It's not active or anything, but it does look just a little bit different than when we first started today. "50 grams of flour. And we're gonna do 50 grams of water. And then just mix this up really good. And so you're still wanting this to just look like thick pancake batter. Okay, and that is it for day one. We're just gonna go ahead and put a lid on this, and I'm gonna set it over here. You want this in a warm, draft-free place, and so like you could put it inside your oven if you wanted. If you put it in your oven, like put a note on the front of your oven so someone doesn't, get up the next morning and start heating the oven up to cook something, and your beginning starter is in there. I just leave mine sitting out on the counter, and I have a candle, like a wax warmer that's over here, and it puts out a pretty good bit of heat, and so I just set this near it, and that's just enough heat, you know, just to keep this kind of at the right temperature. When you're starting to do sourdough, the warmer your house is, the quicker it's going to get fermented and get ready to start using. If you have a colder house, then it's going to take a little bit longer to get ready to use. So we're just going to go ahead and let that sit until tomorrow, and then I'll meet you back here tomorrow to do the next step. Day 2 now. It's been a full 24 hours since we started our sourdough starter. And so if you look at it on the outside, you can see small little bubbles starting to form. And then when you open it up and look inside, there's a bunch of bubbles everywhere. And if you turn it to the side, it's just slow moving, kind of gooey looking. And so if you just looked at it, you might think, oh, it's ready to go, it's ready to use. But if you smell it, it just really does not smell good. I mean, it just smells almost to the point of like just flour and water that's been set out on the counter. It's got a very, like, a not pleasant smell to it right now. But this is the stage it's supposed to be at, so it's totally normal. There's no mold or anything like that on it. But from now on, we're just going to be feeding this once a day, and we're not just going to be adding straight to it. Now we're going to start discarding it. And your discard is the stuff that you have left that you're not going to use. And so since we're not baking with it yet, we're just getting a sourdough starter going. We're going to go ahead and put some of our starter into a new clean jar, and then whatever is left in here would be your discard, but it's not ready to use yet, so we're just going to go ahead and throw it away right now. So to our clean jar, we are going to add about 30 grams of starter. And it's really like globby right now, and a sourdough is not globby. Okay, so everything that's left in here, I'm going to just throw in the garbage. Okay, so I just measured out 30 grams of the sourdough starter. If you weren't using grams and you were just wanting to measure it, just go for like 1/8 of a cup maybe, or a little less than 1/4 of a cup. Sourdough starter is very, very forgiving, so your measurements don't have to be quite right. So if you put just a little bit more in there, that's okay. If you put a little bit less in there, that's okay too. It's just going to take longer to get your sourdough starter going if you're using less. But you could also just use 50 grams of your starter, 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water, or quarter cup, and quarter cup, and it would be perfectly fine. So for my flour, I'm going to add in here, I'm going to add 50 grams, or you could use a quarter cup. And then you're going to mix it up really well, because you want to make sure all of your previous sourdough starter that you put in here is mixed into the new flour and water really good. And I really, like, honestly, I do not like the smell of sourdough starter when you were first getting it going. Before it smells like sourdough, it just really is just this unpleasant smell. It doesn't smell very good. So if your starter is looking too thick, this is just a little bit too thick, you can add more water. It's perfectly fine to add a little bit more water. Different flours hydrate better, and so depending on what kind of flour you're using, you might have to use a little bit more water. And then once you get this mixed up, you're just going to put it in a warm, draft-free space. And you always want to make sure it's covered. And I'm just going to be using just the lid. But you could use a piece of saran wrap if you wanted. I wouldn't use just a plain towel, because then it would dry the top out and you'd form a crust on this, and you don't really want that. So use a lid, a plate on top, saran wrap, Ziploc bag, put it over the top of it. Or another thing that I really like when I make my sourdough bread, and I have some right here, this is a bread that I'm working on right now, is shower caps. They work really good. And then you can just wash them and reuse them. It just gets rid of all the saran wrap. This is ready. So we're just gonna, like I said, put this over in a warm, just draft-free spot until tomorrow. You're just gonna start doing this once You're gonna start doing this once a day. So every day you're going to remove, 30 grams of this and then add it to 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water until you get your sourdough starter. A good sourdough starter is going to take anywhere from 7 days to 14 days-ish to get going. If you're in a really cold place, it could take up to 3 weeks. But what you're looking for is a sourdough starter. When you feed it, it's going to double in size, and so ours hasn't doubled yet. So if you feed it and it's down here in 10 to 12 hours, it's going to be way up here. That's one sign. It's going to have a good sourdough smell. There's going to be bubbles all on the outside, and when you open it up, it's going to have nice little bubbles in the inside. It's going to smell really good, and also when you go to turn your jar over, it's going to have like strings that hang from the side of the jar to your starter. So those are just all signs that your sourdough is ready. So we're just going to go ahead and set this over here, and then I will see you on day 3. All right, we are on day 3 now. We're just going to go ahead and put it into a clean jar here. We're just going to put about 30 grams of our starter, 50 grams of flour, and 50 grams of water. And this time I'm going to go and scrape down the sides really good. And I'm going to start leaving a mark on my jar, that way I know when it's doubled in size. You can use a rubber band for this, but I just take a Sharpie and then just write on the edge of the jar my line. That way I know when it doubles in size. So we're just going to set this back over, and we'll do this the same thing again tomorrow. We are at day 6 here, and I've been feeding this for once a day, every day, and you can see this is rising, but it's still not ready yet because it's not doubling. And before you start using your starter for making bread, you really want it to double in size. Our sourdough starter is almost ready. This is day 9, and I'm just mixing 30 grams of the starter with 50 grams of water and 50 grams of flour, and then I'm just going to mix that and let that sit for another 24 hours, but we're almost ready to make bread with this starter. And so this is day 10 here, and you can see that our starter looks good and healthy, and it is doubling inside, and it's getting all those good little bubbles in it that you want. So we are ready to make sourdough bread with this starter. Okay, so our sourdough is ready to use. It's taken about 11 days to get right where it needs to be. So now what? Now I want you to forget everything I've just told you. So when we were making our starter, we wanted to, make sure we had the appropriate amounts of flour and water to get it going. But now that it's going good, it's really hard to kill this thing. I mean, it's really hard to kill it. They used to carry this in covered wagons when they were going across the plains, and they were not measuring their ingredients. They were just throwing stuff in to keep it alive. This is the new one that we just started together, but my one over here I've had going for over a year, and it is still going great. It's been put into the refrigerator for weeks and weeks. It's been taken to elk camp with us. It got brought down here to Florida. When I get ready to feed this, and I feed this once a day, I just stir it up. I take out half, I discard half, and I put that discard in another jar, and I keep that. And then to the stuff I have left in my jar, I put a scoop of flour and a scoop of water just till I get it to that pancake batter consistency. I don't put this in a clean jar every day. I usually do it once a week, maybe every couple of weeks, just whenever I think about it or whenever it starts getting a lot of buildup around the lid so the lid doesn't fit on well, then I will get a clean jar. Do you have to feed this once a day? If you're going to leave it on the counter, yes, you have to feed it once a day to keep it alive. If you don't want to bake bread often, if you want to do it once a week or so, you can put this in the refrigerator. So to put it into the refrigerator, to keep it, take out half and discard your half, and then to your jar, feed it again. I usually let mine sit out on the counter for an hour, 2 hours, and then I just put it in the refrigerator. So you want to bake with this once a week. You're going to take this back out of the refrigerator, let it warm up. You're going to take half of it out, discard that half, and then to your good stuff here, to your good jar, you're going to feed it with flour and then water, and then let it sit there, and then by the next day it should be good to go. Now if you've left this in there for months, it's going to take several feedings before you get ready to use it. I leave mine on the counter. I don't like putting mine in the refrigerator. I feel that when I put it in the refrigerator, my breads just don't do as well. So I prefer to leave mine on the counter and feed it every day. Now I use mine multiple days a week. The way I feed it, I do have a lot of discard, and I will show you, I'll make a video on what I do with that discard. So now that you have your starter, you're ready to make bread. Am I gonna show you how to make bread? Yes, the next video I will show you how to make a loaf of bread. There's a lot of things with sourdough right now, and some of them are very complicated and some of them are not very complicated. And so I'm going to show you on the next video the easiest sourdough bread recipe you can make. I make several different kinds of sourdough. One is super easy, and then the other one that takes 3 days from start to finish to get a loaf of bread. Now that one is my absolute favorite because it has a very soury taste, but to start off with, I'm going to show you how to make a super easy sourdough recipe that's done quickly. You can start it one afternoon and it's done the next day and you're ready to bake it. So I hope you found this video helpful. So with that, I'm actually getting ready to mix up me some bread, and I will see you on the next video.